Let's now move to the last of the Porter forces, which is the bargaining power of suppliers. Now, the interesting fact is that for a industry, the bargaining power of the buyers of the industry and the bargaining power of suppliers of the industry are really the opposite, the reverse of each other. An industry in which the bargaining power of buyers is high may have a situation where the bargaining power of suppliers is low. Let's look at what gives rise to bargaining power of suppliers. The number of suppliers is one issue. If you are a firm in an industry and that industry is being supplied by a large number of suppliers, then the power is with the firm in the industry. But if there are few suppliers, the power is with the suppliers. On the other hand, the product being supplied, whether it's a commodity or a differentiated product, if it's a differentiated product, then clearly the power is with your supplier. If it's a commodity and there are many people making the same kind of product, then the power is not with the supplier, the power is with you. So, if you look at switching costs, if you do not have switching costs, then the power is with you. If you have switching costs, then the power is with the supplier. The supplier, if the supplier can integrate forward and do what you are doing, then the supplier does not need you and the power is more with him. If the supplier cannot integrate forward, the power is with you. If you are buying a large proportion of the supplier's product, then you have the power. On the other hand, if you are buying a small proportion of the supplier's product, then he has the power. So, when you look at suppliers, when the firm looks at suppliers, attractiveness is exactly the opposite of looking at buyers. You're looking at similar factors, but the impact is the opposite. Now let's look at some of these in a little more detail. Take the number of suppliers, right, to determine how much bargaining power the average supplier has. Take the instance of a house, right, and in that house we are looking at telecom service provided to the house. The house is the firm. Let's assume that the house is the firm. There is a supplier and that supplier is the telecom company. Now there are a variety of telecom companies, therefore you have households which do not pay telecom bills. Households are not worried about not paying telecom bills because they know that if one telecom supplier cuts them out, they can always go to another telecom supplier. So when you have alternate suppliers, you have the power. Take the instance of electricity. Again, house. Consider the house as a firm, okay? And consider suppliers of electricity. In this case, there is only one supplier, the board, the state board, whichever it is. If they cut off power, you have no other means of accessing power. Therefore, you always pay the power bill, right? You have no bargaining power against that supplier, whereas you have bargaining power against the telecom suppliers because there are many of them. So that's one instance of bargaining power of suppliers. Now let's look at switching cost. Let's go back to Maruti. We are looking at Maruti and the paint supplier to Maruti, right? Now, where is the bargaining power? Is the bargaining power with Maruti or is it with the paint supplier? The bargaining power is with the paint supplier because Maruti's switching cost is high. Let's go to the instance of steel. In the case of steel, what happens is that Maruti buys steel from many companies and Maruti has a very low switching cost to change from one company to another company. Therefore, in the case of steel, the bargaining power of the supplier is low and the bargaining power of Maruti is high.